Hi, everyone. So, yesterday in class, we looked over that religious reformers chart. You had a series of Protestant reformers, and you had to read through the textbook, and you had to fill out the chart. So, I just want to review that now so you can go over your notes and you can add to it if you're missing any information. Tomorrow in class, we're going to again touch upon some of these religious reformers. I'm going to go into more detail about the Catholic Reformation, which I'll be discussing in this slideshow. And then I'm going to give you the full period to review for your test. Okay, and remember your test is going to be Friday. So we talked about England as one of it was actually the second country that we looked at for religious reform. The first one being Martin Luther. And, oops. Okay, so the first one being Martin Luther, we talked about how he really kicked off the Reformation. And then we got into King Henry. As we remember, King Henry was actually a devout Catholic and he was against Martin Luther. He was married to Catherine, they only had one child. And he ultimately wanted to have his marriage to Catherine annulled. While all that was going on, he was falling in love with this woman named Anne Boleyn. And the Pope wouldn't allow this divorce, and the Holy Roman Emperor also wouldn't allow for that divorce. This is just a slot, like a family tree that I put together because I think it was getting a little confusing with all the Henrys. So this is actually the Henry that we're looking at. So originally Henry was married to Catherine of Aragon, and together they had a daughter, Mary. Meanwhile, Henry was with Anne Boleyn, and together Henry and Anne Boleyn had a daughter, Elizabeth. And then in his final days, he was with Jane, and together him and Jane had Edward. You then started reading on these other countries, including Switzerland, Scotland, and France. So we're going to take a look at Switzerland first, and we're going to talk about John Calvin. So John Calvin formed his religion called Calvinism, and he wrote this book in 1536 called The Institutes of the Christian Religion, and he discussed ideas about God, salvation, and human nature. And he said that all men and women are sinful by nature. And he believes that God chooses very few people to quote save, and he calls those people the elect. And so he comes up with this doctrine called predestination, meaning that you are born, but a higher order has already kind of laid out this roadmap of your life. He also has his own beliefs on government. So he thinks that the best form of government should be a theocracy, and a theocracy is a government controlled by a religious leader. So he sets up in Geneva, Switzerland, his own version of this perfect government. And within this government, of course, it's run by it's a theocracy, and they have strict laws. Everyone has to attend religious classes. You are not allowed to wear any bright colors, no playing cards. And this is really this moral high, um, it's this model of having high morals for a city. And this is what your citizens should uphold. So just to recap, if you don't have this, you want to add in that Calvin, he believes that people are um, pre-selected by God, and that this is the predestination doctrine. And he thinks that all men and women are sinful by nature. And again, he also thinks that everybody should attend religious classes. You need to be a model of high morals, no bright clothes, no playing cards. And then we get into Scotland. Scotland continues to spread Calvinism, so John Calvin's beliefs, and this is actually run by John Knox. So John Knox of Scotland, and his religion, his followers are known as Presbyterians. In 1560, Calvinism is Scotland's official religion. And he believes that the community church should be governed by a group of laymen called elders or presbyters. So again, it's these are all Protestant religions, but now they're getting broken up into these different sects. Okay, so now we have if you're in Germany and you follow Martin Luther, then you're Lutheran. If you um, are in either Switzerland and France, you might be Calvinist, and then Scotland, it's also Calvinist, but um, Knox's followers are called Presbyterians. So you may have heard of like a Presbyterian church. And then we have France. So Calvinism also spreads to France. So if we remember, it starts in Switzerland, it moves to France, then it moves up over here towards Scotland. And so Calvinist followers in France were called Huguenots. And there's a lot of violence between the Catholics and the Huguenots. So if we look at this map here, where this light blue, this purple pink color is, these are all Huguenots, so Calvinists. And then we can see in northern France up here, these are mostly Roman Catholic. And these here are in that middle zone are kind of those disputed territories. In August of 1572, at St. Bartholomew's feast, Catholics hunted down Protestants and 12,000 Huguenots were killed. So, this is an example of how that conflict between two religions leads to greater violence. And then this is the map that I've been showing you. If we're looking right over here, Geneva, that would have been Calvinist. Also, if we're looking at this little key right here. So we see Calvinists in Switzerland. They're moving up towards France, and then they make their way all the way to Scotland. This yellow is Lutheran. So we can also see that Lutheran beliefs are pushing more towards like Scandinavia into Denmark, Sweden, and then east towards Poland. And then this is just a good map to show the breakdown of these new religions. So this yellow is all Catholicism, but then you see pockets. So like Anglican for the English Church, the green would be Calvinist. So again, that makes sense in Switzerland where we see those pockets, some mixed areas, and then again, some mixed territory. And this is what I mean by those different sects of Protestantism. So again, we're talking about this Reformation, this reform, this challenge between the Roman Catholic Church and Protestantism. And then you have these leaders. So it would be Martin Luther for Lutheranism. For Anglicanism, it would be King Henry. For Calvinism, it'd be John Calvin. But then also Presbyterian would be John Knox. So now we're getting into the Catholic Reformation. So you want to make sure that you have your Catholic Reformation notes document up. You may want to split the screen so that you can listen and take notes at the same time. So after the Reformation is, well, while the Reformation is occurring, the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic Church is getting very nervous. They're getting nervous because people are obviously converting. They're challenging the Catholic belief, they're challenging the role of the church and the Pope. And so we have Ignatius of Loyola, and he founded a new religious order in 1540, and it's called the Society of Jesus. And his members are called the Jesuits. And he founded schools throughout Europe. And the goal of this society is to convert non Christians to Catholicism. And the overall purpose is to ultimately stop the spread of Protestantism. So the Catholic Church is seeing what's going on, this violence, these witch hunts, and they're trying to convert non Christians. They want to stop the spread of Protestantism, but they also want to promote and create schools throughout Europe. And so we have some reforming popes. We're going to be looking at Pope Paul III, and he directed a council of cardinals to investigate indulgences, selling, and other abuses. So, if you remember, indulgences, it's a way to buy your way into heaven by removing your sins, right? But according to Martin Luther and some other Protestant believers, you would say that you don't actually need to pay your way to get into heaven. You just need to have faith in God. And this investigation was approved by the Jesuit order. And so then they use this Inquisition to seek out heresy. And ultimately, they called on church leaders to meet in Trent, which was in northern Italy. And we're going to discuss what happens in Trent, Italy. So, if we talk about real quick the Inquisition, what's the purpose of it? The general purpose was to discover heretics, so either Jews, Muslims, and Protestants, and they want to reinforce the Catholic doctrine and prove the power of the churches. And so this occurred from the 1400s through the 1800s, and this was mainly in Spain and Italy, but it also spread throughout Europe. And the accused, so those that were deemed as heretics, non believers, were put on trial and were guilty until proven innocent. And the Catholic Church would use methods of torture for confession. So, this is one way that they stopped the spread of Protestantism. They would force people to convert to the Catholic doctrine. And if you didn't, then you would be tortured. So if we fast forward to the Council of Trent from 1545 to 1563, we see that Catholic bishops and cardinals all agreed on several doctrines. And this is what they agreed upon. They agreed that the church's interpretation of the Bible was final. They argued that Christians needed faith and good works for salvation. So remember, salvation, removing the sins. So you need good faith and good works, and not saved by faith alone. And that's what Martin Luther argued. And within the Council of Trent, they also deemed that selling indulgences would be banned. These were some of those good works that we were kind of talking about. Some of them being like, if you're a Catholic, maybe the first step is that you're baptized. You have a baptismal. Then, when you're a little bit older, you are confirmed, the Eucharist, reconciliation, and the anointing of the sick, which happens at the end of one's life. And then we're left with the legacy of the Reformation. So ultimately, the Reformation ended Christian unity of Europe and left it culturally divided. If we go back to this slide over here, we can see that Europe is culturally and religiously divided. Okay, so if we're thinking of this Roman Catholicism right here in this yellow, not the entire map is not yellow. We see pockets of blue, we see pockets of green representing either Anglican, Calvinist. We see in the orange where we have Lutheran. So we do see that there's the breakdown of religious unity because the Catholic Church is breaking down. We see that the Council of Trent made the Catholic Church more united because they ended the indulgences. They said that the church's interpretation of the Bible was final, but they also agreed that salvation is through not only faith in God, but also acts of good work. We also notice that Protestants are emphasizing the role of education in promoting beliefs. And this is where we start to see the rise of colleges and universities throughout Europe. Okay, so that's the end of this slideshow. So you may have to go back and pause a little bit and jot down some more notes. And then when you're done, you can submit that to Classroom.